So I thought I would do a video on my feelings about Palestinian Action being getting banned. Now, there are two reasons why I think they've been banned. One, I think, is, shall we say, the more sensible reason. However, the second one, and I am leaning towards the more of the second one. I will admit it is quite conspiratorial, but as I hope you will say, it is very much a case of, well, once is a coincidence, twice is suspicious, but three times, well, now there are patterns starting to emerge and other things when you've looked into what, shall we say, these other people behind Palestinian Action have said about, well, the war in Ukraine. Again, that probably gives you quite a big hint about what we're going to talk about. But first of all, about this protest, absolutely. Go out and protest as much as you want. I am fine with that. The big thing and always the big risk comes with direct action. And this is what ultimately Palestinian Action, ultimately, I think we're trying to ramp up into, getting into some, quote, serious direct action. Now, what is direct action? Well, for an example of direct action, again, two things spring to mind to my mind instantly. But if you remember the whole Fathers for Justice saga that happened, what, in the 90s, I think it was, where these guys would dress up in superhero costumes and they would climb up a building or whatever, and again, that was their form of, again, direct action. The other one you may remember, and I think this is quite interesting to talk about, was, you remember when Starmer got glitter bombed by the group wanting to push for proportional representation, and that if their demands were not heard, they would be dropping more glitter bombs across the land. And meanwhile, how many more people have been glitter bombed? Well, only, quite frankly, Keir Starmer, because, well, I think everyone realized that they did far, far more harm to the movement of trying to push for PR than anybody else in recent memory. So there is that. And that is the risk, that when you do direct action, sometimes that action can have a lot of consequences. We remember, of course, Just Stop Oil. Their direct action caused them to lose a heck of a lot, and I mean a heck of a lot, of public support on this. The last thing you want when you're going to work is, or you're trying to go to a meeting, oh, sorry, I'm missing the meeting because, Just Stop Oil are protesting. It annoys a lot of people. And then a lot of people go, well, I don't really support you that much anymore, or it sours the movement. And they end up talking about more the problems of the disruption of the protest caused rather than the actual message that the protest wanted to send. So there is that balancing act. And I think when you look at the recent direct action, shall we say, that Palestinian Action have been involved in, quite honestly, they were very lucky they weren't shot. Because if you break into a military base, that is the real risk you run, getting shot. And they were very, very lucky they did not. And this leads me into, like I say, the two reasons why I think they were banned. First of all, it's probably not a good idea to try and let protest groups do this type of stuff to military bases. Because, well, at the end of the day, ultimately, someone might end up getting shot. Probably one of these protesters. And we could argue the merits and the pros and cons of doing this to like military bases, but at the end of the day, I probably think it's not a good idea to do direct action against military bases. Now, protest outside them absolutely all you want. By all means, have at it. Um, the problem comes when you want to, shall we say, start doing stuff inside that military base. That is where, shall we say, the guns might start getting clicked, and again, heat of the moment, lots of things could go wrong. I think a protester could lose their lives. Um, that's option one. Like I say, feel free to let me know what you think down below. However, option two, I think, and again, I will admit this is quite conspiratorial, but I think, as I said at the beginning, there is a pattern emerging, and it involves a lot of the direct action that the people at Palestine Action have been taking against certain targets. Because a lot of these targets that they have been going after haven't, shall we say, been very dubious connections, very dubious connections indeed, to uh, supplying Israel or being involved in the genocide in Gaza. Those are incredibly dubious and some incredibly tenuous links uh, some of these companies actually have or being involved in it. However, one thing we do know, and we covered this back when there was a factory that was making drone parts for not Israel, not for America, but for the Ukrainians, was again sabotaged by Palestinian Action. And as I said at the time, hold on a second, the F-35 meant to be super tip top, super secret, right? Why would they be making these parts in an unsecured facility, right? This facility, as we said, tapped in making drone parts for Ukraine. It's not the first time, shall we say, that a facility involved in making drone parts, supplies, etc., to the Ukrainians has been targeted by protesters. And if you look at the places where Palestine Action were targeting and planned to target, um, these were also places where Ukrainian pilots were being trained on the F-16 and the Mirage fighter. Now, as I said, once is a coincidence, but when all these things start stacking up, where we know that Russian agents are trying to get these people to be assets for them, to try and co-opt them into doing stuff like this, I think the pro-Palestinian movement needs to be very careful, and it needs to start questioning where these people are getting their intelligence from and the ideas that these targets that they are going after are involved in the genocide that's going on in Palestine. I think that it sets a very bad example for the Palestinian Action movement to do this and not question where this information came from, who was, who gave them this information, has it been cross-checked, verified, etc. I don't think it has. I don't think it has. And I honestly think that the real reason, and Yvette Cooper came out and said this morning, that when they look at prescribing groups, part of the big reason is when they look at them, they look at, is this group a potential threat to national security? I suspect, I don't have any proof, but I suspect that Palestinian Action may have been infiltrated by Russian assets or by people getting information from Russia and using this information from the Russians to, well, trying to help their war efforts in Ukraine. Now, you can call it conspiratorial, whatever. You can even think I'm wrong. That's fine. But when all these coincidences all start to come together, it's a bit suspicious. It's a bit suspicious. And it goes on to thinking, hmm, strange how all these targets also have a very strong connection to helping the war in Ukraine. So let me know what you think about this, because quite frankly, I think that's the real reason why Palestine Action has, I think, been prescribed. So, as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.